That's what I'm talking about, son. Get you some of that daggone pie.
Woo-hoo! Looky there. There's your bug-eyed big one right there.
Getting started. We're getting started.
Here's what I'm talking about. Gosh dang gorilla.
Let's go, baby. Straight meat. God, look at that biggin.
Hey, welcome in everybody to the BAM Pod. I'm your host, Big Ed, and on the line tonight, I went out. This is the third episode in a row that we're going to have a champion. And this champion is from California here, and he's fishing the Apex Tour, and he went up to one of our now kind of, I want to say up and coming lakes. You know, one of these lakes that's really going to, starting to make a name for itself in Lake Almanor, and he won the championship up there, so he is officially a champion. I've known him a long time, Matt Nadeau. So welcome in, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we had you on earlier talking a little bit about your, up and coming, rising success, making the Apex, doing this, from coming from some of the lower tournament circuits and working your way up, constantly working, constantly being a part of this. And now you've done it, man. You have absolutely made it to the apex of fishing here on the West Coast. How does it make you feel?
Man, it's been quite an experience from, starting out fishing team circuits with my wife, coming up, fishing the amateur stuff, also doing the co-angler side, and then now, the last couple of years fishing the Apex Pro Tour. So it's been quite a journey, and it's fun. The camaraderie, excellent between the guys, and to be a champion, one of the best in the West now. Ken Ma puts it this way, he says, you'll always be a champion. So, no matter how you look at it, nobody can take that away from me. And, it's just one of the greatest feelings in the world.
Yeah. Recently you were just down at the California Delta, fishing a Pro-Am down there, right?
Yeah, we're fishing a Pro-Am last week at the California Delta. Yep.
Now on that event, you didn't win, but you're still a champion. See, it still works.
Yeah. You can always fall. You always have that to fall back on. You
Right.
Come home and you just give your trophy a big old hug and a kiss and say, okay, I remember that event. So yeah, good fallback.
Yeah. For those of us that actually know you really well, and know Chelsea very well, I'm really surprised that, you're the one who rose up, because she's the true talent in the family.
Dude, I always say that to everybody, man. If Chelsea was on the front of the boat, she'd be, whooping everybody. So,
right?
She could flip with the best of them and catch them with the best of them for sure. So, and my son, man, he's right behind. He's right there. So he's coming up. Velocity. He actually just won his first tournament right before I won mine.
Wow.
And that was a Future Pro Youth League tournament where he does 100% everything on his own. So, being a dad and having that happen and watching your son come up is even a greater feeling than being an Apex champion, believe it or not.
Yeah, I'll bet. There's something definitely to hang your hat on there, just watching that happen right in front of you too, and I know you're out in the boat with him and but watching him do it all, it's got to be impressive. Got to be just makes you feel good inside.
It's a family affair, man. It's, I honestly don't think a fisherman, an angler could be successful without, their better half and without making it a family, experience, and I think that's what's really helping me rise to the top the last couple of years is having my wife and my kids out there holding up signs. Everybody, that follows me on Facebook, they can see my posts. The kids are out there in the morning, no matter if it's at Trinity at 30 degrees or, down south and it's 100 degrees. They're out there supporting me every step of the way.
And that's just awesome. It's just awesome to see. But let's get into Almanor a little bit, and let's talk about what you did up there to kind of to get this win. Not just all the techniques in it, but what did it really take to go out there and win that tournament? Because that's not an easy lake all the time. It can get really tough.
Yeah, it was kind of wild. I've been there when I was about 7 years old. Just fished on the shore a little bit. Pretty much went in blind. With no prior history of fishing the lake. And I'm not a big network guy. A lot of these guys network and try to figure out a bunch of stuff before these tournaments, as well as while the tournament's going on, they're kind of sharing information. And with me, I just kind of do it solo. I'm kind of a self-taught angler, and I did a little looking at Google Earth and a few little YouTube videos and stuff like that. But otherwise, I just kind of went in and just settled down and picked one spot in the lake. The first day of the tournament, it started off, relatively fast. I think I had my limit by like maybe 9 o'clock. It seems like the fish were swimming around. They were suspended. I was catching a bunch of short fish. It was definitely a pretty active bite on day one.
And what were you really focusing on when you're looking? You're going up to this is a 28,000 acre lake, so it's not a small lake, not a huge lake, but it's not a small lake. And even just looking at Google Earth, it just opens it up. You look at it and go, okay, well, here's an area I want to pick. What drew you to that area?
The very first stop of the tournament, I saw a main point coming out of the I can't remember. It's on the southeast corner, the river coming in. I can't think of the name of the river, but I told myself I want to start on that main point with some water flowing. And I rolled up there day one, and there was another competitor sitting on that point. So I just kind of kept moving down the bank a little bit, and then I found it ended up being a series of 3 points in that general vicinity, and I just kind of settled in, and I had a 2.8 Kitech and a 3.3 Kitech. And I was throwing an electric shad color with a 3/16 ounce ball head. And that's been my go-to, for the last couple of years. In all the Apex Series events, I think I've probably done 90% of my damage on a Kitech. So my confidence is there. I've really dialed in fishing that technique. And I just slowed down and started fishing it. And like I said, it started off pretty hot and fast and furious and kept with that pattern through the whole day.
Now, did you with the Apex? There's a couple ways to qualify. Weight and numbers. When you were going into this, which one were you mostly focused on, or did you care at the time, or did it change? During the day, or kind of give us a little insight on what you're throwing this Kitech out there, and it's like you said it's going pretty hot and heavy, fast and furious. It's on fire. You're just like, hey, I'm catching fish. Did you go at that point? Did you just turn and say, hey, you know what? I think I'll just go run these numbers up and see if I can't get 70, 80 fish and just call it good?
That's what's awesome about the Apex format is you could go in and pick a spot like on Google Earth, or if you want to go largemouth fishing and fish for weight, or you could go, fish for numbers. With me, I pick these tournaments, or I go into these tournaments fishing for numbers. And I figure as many fish as I could catch, if I could, go through enough keepers, I'll catch weight and numbers. So yeah, I went into Almanor and just figured, if I could catch as many fish as I could, I'm going to be looking good at the end of the day. And you know what? I ended up with 10 keepers. I had 25 bites, and I had about, 10 shorts. So. The bite was good. They were biting, they were eating, and I just kept, like I said, I kept with the 2.8 and the 3.3 Kitech as my primary pattern the first day.
Now, you said you were fishing these 3 points that were kind of in succession there. Were you what kind of a pattern were you looking at? Were you or were you thinking this was all pre-spawn, post-spawn? Was the spawn really starting to get off? Go off? Was it, because that lake's at what, 5,700 feet or something? And it's pretty
Yeah.
much it's pretty much loaded with smallmouth with some largemouth scattered in. Not really a spotted bass lake, and so what were you kind of looking at?
It's funny. I thought the lake was a lot deeper than it really is. I think the lake isn't really more than 50, 60 feet deep, which I was really surprised to hear that. So I kind of stuck. I don't think I ever caught a fish deeper than 15 feet of water. These fish were definitely in a post spawn on day one. I've never seen a lake change so quick in 3 days. So these fish were definitely in a post-spawn pattern on day one. Like I said, they were moving around. You could see them on your graph. They were suspended. And then as I was getting my boat pulled out of the water, that on day one, we had a pretty major earthquake happen.
Yeah.
And my boat, like Chelsea was driving my boat, making the turn into the cabin, and my boat jumped off the ground about 4 feet, literally.
Wow.
And that was the epicenter of the earthquake, was in the middle of the lake. So day two comes, and the water's murky, and the fish, man, were completely shut off. The bite was, man, it was just dead. It was crazy how much an earthquake could change the bite. So that was quite an experience having that happen.
Wow, I don't know that I've ever been a part of anything like that,
Yeah.
I don't, so what happened as far as, did you have to switch up to get bites, or was it just completely off for everything pretty much everywhere?
I caught my fifth fish, my last cast on day two, and I had 7 bites, and I put 5 fish in the boat. So, and I made a key adjustment. I was fishing a point, and I think I caught 3 of my 5 keepers on this point, and I decided to throw a deep diving crankbait. I was throwing a Strike King 6XD crankbait, and I actually put my 2 biggest fish in the boat throwing the crankbait. So, I threw the Kitech, and then just made that adjustment, showed them something different, and it paid off. So,
yeah, that's a real key mix up right there, to go from the Kitech throwing smaller baits, 3 and down to a big 6XD, really dredging the bottom and then finding that out on your, the last part of the day, going into the final day, knowing now at this point, I'm guessing you probably knew you had made the third day.
Oof, I didn't know, man. I was still trying to go for numbers at this point, and I went in with 5 keepers. So I'm like, man, I don't know if this is going to be enough. I honestly felt like I had about a 50-50 chance of making the cut. So, and after the first day, I had 10 keepers, and I told myself, man, I didn't look at Tourney X. I had no idea what 10 keepers would do, and I honestly thought, man, I was bombing the tournament. I was like, these guys are jacking them, and I only have 10 fish. I'm going to be way down. And day one, I go in, and I had 10 keepers, and I was right there in the hunt. I was pleasantly surprised. 10 keepers for $12.69 in weight. So I was pretty much good in both of the deals.
Both categories, so, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So now you come in, you've got 5 fish. You're a little shaky, I guess. I thinking, you don't know what's going to happen, but also, this.
I was a little shaky, especially after the earthquake.
Right.
Sorry, I just had to clear that.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean that this major event goes on, where here's this earthquake happens. Did it make let's talk about that for just a second before we go on. But I mean, what did that do to the area? I mean, was it, people are, people always think, California earthquakes, that sort of thing. Now, mind you, where this earthquake happened, it's also very rocky territory. It's very, it's a higher elevation. It's not exactly what you think of, like, devastation wise can happen to like places like San Francisco and all that. So what kind of, what did happen, in the area?
Tired of searching through ads to find bass articles in your favorite fishing magazine? Well, we have a solution for that. Introducing Bass Angler Magazine with over 30 articles in every issue, filled with tips and techniques to help you catch more fish. Follow the pros as they publish the most up-to-date seasonal methods to catching bigger bass. Whether you're a beginner or professional angler, make Bass Angler Magazine part of your gear today. Be a part of the fastest growing bass publication in the nation. Log on to bassanglermag.com with code TV and save 20% when you subscribe now.
These fish were in a pre-spawn pattern on day one, and I think they were on the verge of going into the spawning pattern. The sun, there was multiple days of sunshine, but the earthquake, these fish were moving shallow. They were trying to kind of start creating their beds and doing their thing. So the earthquake came in that night or that afternoon, and the bottom, all that settling, it shook up all that settling. So I went back to my primary area, and I'm telling you that water was, we lost about a foot visibility on the water,
Wow.
which is amazing, just from that bottom being shook up. So I think that was the main reason those fish shut off on day two. Also, like I said, they're transitioning into to their spawning pattern.
Right.
So I just had to grind them out, and then day three comes around, and we got woken up by another earthquake. We ran into like a little cabin, and it was built in like 1940s, and man, this cabin probably shook 5 feet from side to side. We got woken up at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and with a second earthquake. So day three comes around, and these fish decided to go into a full spawn on day three.
Oh, better get it done now before we can't, huh?
That's it. That's it,
buddy. So now you get up. You had this earthquake again. Did it delay the blast off or anything like that?
No, everything was normal. Everything was good. I was kind of thinking the tournament might get canceled at this point. Just because of trees and, the cabins. I didn't know if they were going to fall over or what was going to happen. So, but nothing was delayed. We had a normal blast off, and, I ran to my primary spot, did the same thing I was doing, the first 2 days. And man, I could not get a bite. I had 0 fish at 9 o'clock, and I was like, what am I going to do? It's 9 o'clock. I missed that morning window. I've been getting a couple good bites every morning. I'm totally screwed at this point, and decided to make a run to where I started the very first day where that river came in, that main point, and I threw the 6XD out there, fished it for, 10 casts or so, and about 3 feet from the boat, man, I had a giant smallmouth, the biggest one I saw all week, about a 5 or 6 pounder. Take the crankbait, took it about 5 feet down, and bam, she came off. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is how my day is going to go. And, at that point it was, 9:30, 10 o'clock. I made a move back to my primary area, and there's a series of about 3 points and then like a little spawning bay.
Right.
And I've been looking at these fish all week. They've been moving around and roaming in the spawning area. They won't let you get close to them. If you get to where you could barely see them, they dart off. And by golly, that night they decided to make their beds, and they made their beds pretty deep. They were like between 8 and 10 feet deep. The wind was blowing. The water was murky from the earthquake. But all you can see is just these little dark spots, just barely see a dark spot.
Right.
And these dark spots, they weren't there the first 2 days. There's no dark spots at all. So I flipped my little 2.8 Kitech on the dark spot and whammo. And I cleaned house, man, in about 45-minute period with every fish I weighed in, came in about a 45-minute window. And after that, I never got another bite all day.
Wow. That's impressive right there.
It was crazy. Like I said, I've never seen a lake change in 3 days as fast as Almanor has changed. It went from a pre-spawn to they didn't know what the heck they're doing to a full-on locked-on deal. So,
normally, I was going to say, normally the first day when they go to the beds, they're not locked on. It's just I'm gonna go up and we're gonna take our time, make a nice bed here, get this thing going, start enticing the ladies in, and then maybe you get lucky somewhere in there and get one of them to bite here and there, but it's usually not quite that quick.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, every dark spot I saw, I caught a fish on. And there was, I think I caught 7 fish. And then after I caught them all in the dark spot, nothing else. I never saw another fish. I rotated that spot in 3 or 4 times during that day after I caught my limit, and never got another bite. So,
wow.
But I know there was more fish. I seen about 30 fish cruising around in there in the first 2 days of the tournament. So, there was a lot of fish cruising around in that zone, but I just rolled up right time, and you had to throw your bait exactly on the center of the dark spot to get bit. So if you missed the center of the dark spot by 2-3 inches, they wouldn't bite it. So
no.
And wild.
Now on the second day, on the third day, the 6XD really didn't make much of a difference at all. It was not a major factor. It all reverted back to your smallest Kitech at your 2.5, right?
Yeah, the 2.8 Kitech.
Or 2.8.
Every fish I weighed in was on a 2.8. Even though earlier in the day I lost that 5 or 6 pounder on the 6XD.
Yeah.
So it could have been a 17 pound plus bag I would have weighed in.
What did you end up bringing in?
I think it was 1535 or 36, 1536, I want to say.
That's a good last day. That's a good closeout.
It was good. Yeah, I had 1269 the first day, 1218 the second day, and then 1536? Yeah, 1536 the final day. So, but yeah, it was a blessing to have that big day the last day, man. And it was close too. Austin Bonjour had 1515. So man, it was down to the wire right there at the end, and we were looking at each other's bags when we came in, and he had a bigger one than me, and I was like, oh man, but I had a bigger average, and we knew it was going to come down to the wire, and I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to coming out with the trophy. So
that's awesome. Yeah. It's like I said, that lake has, I've been fishing there for a very long time as well. And it's like, that lake it has its moments. It's like some days, you go out there and just catch some really good fish. Other days you get out there and catch, barely any, or just some small fish. But it is a pretty good smallmouth lake. I mean, you gotta, how many of the fish, did you catch any largemouth during the entire tournament?
Yeah, I don't think there was one largemouth weighed in the whole event.
Yeah.
From what I hear, there's one area on the north end that pretty much all the largemouth live in that lake.
Yeah.
And I don't think,
it's called the airport.
Yeah, is it? Okay. I know it's along a levee, like a little road, and, and I don't think a lot of guys are fishing down there. I think most of the field was kind of in the southeast corner,
Yeah,
but,
there's definitely a lot more grass when you get up towards that area where those largemouth are living. There's, it holds a little more of the largemouth, but yeah.
I can't wait to go back. We'll have to take a trip there.
Yeah.
Me and Mark the same.
That'd be fun. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know where Mark came in on this one, but I don't remember him holding a trophy, so probably wasn't first.
Yeah, I'll have
um,
to show him some specs. No.
yeah, so let's pivot a little bit here and talk. Some of the things going in. You're as you've been going through this process of becoming an apex angler. Last year was your first year, and you got to you kind of got to see what it was going to take, and like you said, the travel around. And it is a little nicer here. A couple episodes ago we talked with Luke Palmer, and it was one of the things that he was talking about, was the missing the family and not being around and not seeing things happen. And this is one of the I think one of the top reasons why the apex is going to be successful is the fact that talking with some of these pros all over the country, they talk, and they say, yeah, well, we'd like to fish the West Coast, but it's just such a far drive. It's so far out there. It's so this, it's so that. Now, mind you, Gunnersville and the Lake Erie and Texoma, all these are a long drive for us to go that way too. But I guess there's fewer of us. So how do being able to be home, having the kids there, having Finesse, having Velocity, having Chelsea there, makes you've already said it makes such a big difference to you, and having that kind of support. What does it feel like just being able to say, what, we're going to fish at a pro level, but we're going to do it on the West Coast? What does that really mean to you about this, the whole Apex thing?
For us to have the opportunity to have the Apex Pro Tour out west is awesome. It's what we've been needing and striving for a long time out west. And there's been some smack talk and people doubting it, but I think the majority of anglers are coming around on it and starting to see, the benefits and personally, like I said, the camaraderie between this group of guys, because we're only talking, I think on the schedule this year, I think we only have 42 anglers. Mm-hmm. So, we get together, we go to dinner, we all stay in like the same area, the same cabins. So the camaraderie between this group of anglers is like no other circuit, no other, experience there is. And then to have families, everybody brings their families, and we go to smaller lakes and smaller venues, and some of these like Plymouth Pines, they open up their doors, their restaurant, their bar, and and their cabins, and so it's just a smaller platform that we could really, just strive and build the West Coast through, So, we're fishing for, like I just won $20,000, so that's a good little payday. That's a good payday.
Yeah.
And you know what? From the very first Apex to now, I've cashed a check in every one I've fished. So I think. What's that? 5, 6, 7 events, I think.
Right.
And I've top 10 5 of those. So, I have a pretty good track record. So, I guess I fit the Apex really well. And
yeah.
And how it just having an opportunity to fish for numbers, something different is really cool. So.
Right. Just saying that, MLF this year made a major change. They went back to a 5-fish format. And
yeah.
It's interesting. I think personally, I believe it's lost a little bit, just because I don't find it as exciting, because once somebody kind of gets a big lead, they're just kind of there, it's
right.
First or second or whatever period, it's over, and you're kind of like, I don't really want to, it's no fun to just sit here and watch somebody that can't catch them, not catch them, but not catch up to that person, and fishing the way the Apex is right now, and having both options and qualifying, and then changing it up on day 3 to only, your best 5. I think that's, gives you a lot of an advantage, going into it, because it does give you a couple ways to qualify.
Yeah, it's really neat that folks at home could follow along on Tourney X,
Mhm.
and watch who's on top and who's catching the most. And we're all given the same yellow board to measure our fish on, so and then we weigh our fish, and then everybody at home could, see our average on our weight, and then see how many fish we're catching. So it's cool they could follow along at home, and and
Yeah,
then
and
they usually cut it off like an hour before weigh-in, and and somebody usually catches a big one at the end, and it kind of makes it exciting that way too.
yeah, gives it that little bit
Yeah.
of excitement to it to see what's going to come
Yeah.
out. Uh, Kind of going off of what you just said there, you're also being able to fish a lot of different waters that you probably wouldn't, in a regular event. I mean, Thermalito Afterbay, Trinity Lake, Almanor. There's just been a bunch of lakes that you fished. Amador, I think that was another one you fished. That you can get onto, and you can have a maximum of 50 boats anyways for this tournament. So I mean, you 50 boats on a lake's not that many. So now you're taking this pro level to an even better thing where you can really bring it and get into some of those areas that have amazing fisheries and really nice places that they've built up for anglers to go to, or just if you want to go vacation, if you just want to go up and see them. These are some really nice places to go see, but now you're putting it on this smaller level, and you guys are bringing all this attention to these areas. How does that, have you really noticed how they've opened up to you in those different lakes and stuff?
Bass U, folks. Information is pouring over. If you want to learn more about every lake, how to fish, shallow, deep, in between, skipping docks and rocks and cranking, slow wiggling, chatter, smattering, you get it at Bass U. We got the best of the best. If somebody's ever caught a bass on something and perfected the technique, we got you covered. Get on Bass U TV, check it out, sign up, be a member, be part of it, folks. Keep learning. I'm Gerald Swindle. Subscribe to Bass U.
Yeah. Like I said, Plumas Pines, they opened the doors. They weren't open yet for the season, and they opened their bar, they opened their restaurant, they opened the cabins, and then we're completely, they completely opened the doors for us anglers. And same with Trinity, same thing. They opened the doors for us. And El Capitan, there's a 30 mile an hour speed limit on that lake. It fished really small, but it's a lake that you would never be able to fish a major tournament in, and narrowing it down to 30 to 50 guys, gives us an opportunity to fish these smaller lakes. You mentioned Thermalito, that's one that, most people have never fished, and it would never be a tournament lake. And the guys the first year went to Thermalito. And some of these lakes like Clear Lake and Delta, they just get pounded, and it's the same old lake, the same old spots. You got the local guys always going to the same holes, and you're having to compete against the Delta guys. And then, these lakes that we fish, really there's maybe one or two guys that, would be considered a local guy or have even fished the lake before. So, everybody's kind of, we have no practice. So everybody's kind of on the same playing field going into these events. They all just go in, and we just got to kind of play out the day as it goes and try to figure them out. So it's just really cool, and it's exciting. This year we got Lake Martinez down in Arizona. I'm really excited about. That's, I think, a lake that these bigger events never go to, and it's grassy, and it's just that one I'm really excited about. But Almanor was actually the most exciting for me on the schedule. So,
Right.
and look at me, I'm champion. So,
Yeah.
I guess
No,
I can
that's
be excited about that for a reason.
absolutely no reason not to be.
Heck yeah, I'm really looking forward. Next stop, Columbia River.
There
Last
you go.
year I made a top 10, and Ken Ma ended up winning the tournament. But Columbia River, I've made that my favorite lake. That's my favorite lake after fishing it last year.
Right.
Christian Ostrander, I think he caught 100 and something fish one day. And I was on a spot where I caught a fish for the first day, 3 hours. I took every single cast. I caught a fish.
Wow.
And, what fishery could you do that? Throwing at the same piece of structure, catching a fish every single cast.
Wow.
So Columbia River, I'm really looking forward to that one.
And that's the next event coming up, right? For the Apex?
Yeah, that's coming. Yep, coming up in July. Yep.
In July. So with that being said, you just left Almanor, then you were down at the Delta, now you're going, what's, in between there? Is there much else that you're doing in between there, or just?
I'm kicking it around to fish the Clear Lake Open.
Mm-hmm.
I might do that. I might not. I know Velocity's got a tournament coming up in the Delta in between, so that'll be cool to watch him. Watch him do his thing. I want to talk about the Delta for a second, if that's okay.
Let's do it.
So, man.
I know you went down there. I know it was, and this is part of, getting into the Delta. Let's set this up a little bit. It has been blown out. The water that is coming in California right now, people don't even know. We are going to be melting snow until probably mid-July. There's going to be snow melt. The rivers are up. I've been down to the Delta already. It is muddy. It is dirty. It is still flowing higher than it should be. The tides are kind of weird because there's so much water going out that it's hard for it to come back in, even though it's in the ocean. There's a giant amount of seals roaming around right now. And then you guys have a tournament in the middle of all of that. The spawn's trying to go on. So talk about how different it was and how difficult it was down there, because the fish in the Delta right now is not an easy thing. Not as easy as it used to be in the past.
Yeah, the Delta's fishing real tough, man. The grass is really dirty. I think just all the dirty water, the grass is just collecting it. The hydro is collecting it. So it's real tough to even fish a chatterbait. Every time I fish a chatterbait, I get hung up in the grass, I rip it off. And right now, I think ripping it off the grass creates a kind of a dust cloud every time. So, that's definitely not helping. I fished the Western Bass Shootout about a month ago or so, and it just seems like all year long, everybody keeps talking about these 30-pound bags, 30-pound bags. Oh, it's going to be pre-spawn, post-spawn, spawn. These 30-pound bags ain't happening. They're just not there right now. I'm sure the fish live there. The sea lions ain't helping, but I think all year long this year, if you could catch a 15-pound bag every day consecutively, you're pretty dang good in Delta. So, and like I said, it has to do with sea lions. It has to do with dirty grass because of all the water we've had, all the dirty water coming in. And
well, what are you doing to have some success down there? What's been your number one bait, or what's been your, maybe couple baits that have been really working when you are down there? Because like I said, when I was down there, I saw the same thing. I mean, the grass is just coated with mud. It's just like, it's normally filtering that stuff out, but there's just no way it can do that anymore. It's just loaded.
Yeah, it's clogged up. I've been primarily still catching them on a chatterbait, getting my best bites on a chatterbait. It's real hit or miss. You got to find the right little area. I'm dialing in that inside weed line on high tide. That's always kind of been a player. And you just got to hit those windows, the typical Delta scene. If you miss your window, you miss the bite, and you're weighing in, 8 to 10 pounds if you're lucky. So catching that window, catching that inside edge with a chatterbait, jackhammer. I throw the Lake Fork Magic Shad, and it's in a 4.5-inch trailer. Just all green pumpkin, and that's been my go-to. That's always been my go-to in the Delta. Right. This last tournament, I fished the spot where I fished in the Western Bass Shootout, and I hooked. I don't know if I've ever suffered such a mental game in my life. I hooked 3 fish between 5 and 8 pounds. The first one I hooked, and and she came out of the water, and she was 5.5, 6 pounder. And I was like, okay, Matt, man, just shake it off. Okay, get over it. Did the same thing, hooked another one. And this fish was a good 7, 8 pounder. Did the same thing, came out, thrashed the bait, fling, my bait went flying out of her mouth. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to shake this off? I can't believe this is happening. You know, half an hour went by, third fish I hooked. Another one, man, I'm talking between a 5 to 7 pound fish, comes out, throws my bait again. And at that point, I just, how do you recover from something like that? You know, in a major tournament like the Wild West Pro-Am tournament. So, you know, by then the tide.
Just go catch a couple 10-pounders. It'll be fun.
Yeah, that's what I told myself. I just need one good bite. So by then the tide rolled out and I lost that inside edge, and the grass was all dirty and it just, I just scrambled around the rest of the day trying to get a couple bites, and I had 4 fish for almost 9 pounds the second day, and I was one 5-pounder out of making the top 10, and that's it's just a mental game. Sometimes you got to just shake it off and keep moving. And but like I said, if you miss that window in the Delta, you're struggling. And I had my window, I had the opportunities, and they were gone after them fish came off. So
that's a really good point you bring up, that it's, a lot of this is a mental game, and the other side of that is that sometimes it's about being prepared for the opportunities that are presented to you, not losing those fish. Now, is there anything you could have done to not lose those fish? I don't know. But it comes down to, hey, I lost these fish. I've got to get back in the game. I've got, hey, this is how I want to make my livelihood. I need to get more fish. So in this event, you didn't seem to, but what do you do, how do you go into the day, expect when that does happen? I mean, what is it that really does go through your head? What is it like? Screw it, just pick it up and just keep going. Hey, I've got to keep cutting that water. Do you start chasing the tides at that point, going, hey, I need that high tide. I need that inside line. I got a couple spots. Is it just what really motivates and keeps you going out there to keep going on those?
I think the Delta is the toughest one to mentally, kick back from because of the tide. Like I said, once you lose that window, you gotta mentally switch up your game. You either gotta go punching, or with me, I just went to a weightless Senko, and I told myself I'm gonna fish the outside edges, the little inside pockets, wherever I could just throw a weightless Senko and try to put my fish in a boat. And actually, I did catch, I think, my nicest one on a weightless Senko after that happened. So just trying to adjust and trying to read the water, is a biggie, and like you said, you could chase the tide, and but I felt bad for my co-angler. I told him after I lost those 3, I'm like, man, you're gonna be ready to get off my boat at the end of today, because all you're gonna hear is me say, oh man, I lost that one, I lost that all day long, man. I filled his ear up, so I felt bad for him, but yeah, you just gotta. The best thing to do is try to catch another big one, and then that will clean your slate real quick. If you could catch another couple good ones, bam, you're right back in the game. So it's just trying to adjust to get those big ones back on the line.
Yeah, and that and that's basically the point. There is just keep going on it. Just you got it. Like you said, the Delta's a tough one because of the tides, because of the way that it fishes, the way that you have to make those adjustments on the fly, and that's what makes Ken Moss such an excellent angler. Is he does make those adjustments, and he's learned to get past that. Hey, you're gonna lose some fish, period, end of story. You're going to lose some fish on the Delta. Right. They are a different fish for sure. You can have a great hook set on them. You can get really good bite and just land it, and it's there. It's I got him, and he comes off, and you just go, I don't know how that happened. I've lost so many on frogs out there that have it's like, I waited on him, got that, slam that hook into him, and it's like, oh no, I've got 65-pound braid, this thing's coming in, and it comes off. you know, and you're
I
just,
had a couple of them happen. Couple of them happened last week as well. A couple frogfish came off.
yeah, and it's a
And when
that's
they
a
did
tough
grab
one.
the chatterbait they were just barely getting too. Like you'd see it just barely on their lip, you know, and then they would come out of the water and thrash it, and then bam, it'd fly off. You know, they weren't getting it down deep like they usually get it. So
Yeah,
I
and
think
some
they
of
were
that's probably just
just
the color of the water and the lack of, you know, the seeing it really clear, and getting
right.
it, you know, getting it the whole way they want to, you know. What was a little bit of the difference, because the Western Bass Shootout and then this event here, how much difference did you see in the water? I mean, that was what, almost 2 months apart?
I think so, about 2 months. Yeah.
Yeah, and then here's this other event. You know, now you're down there at a Wild West, you know, tournament. And what was the big differences that you saw in the two? Was it, you know, or was there any major differences? Did it clear up at all?
There was.
For nearly 100 years, Grundens has built gear you can trust to keep you fishing no matter the weather conditions. With head-to-toe coverage of high-performance outerwear, sportswear, footwear, and much more, it's no wonder Grundens products are backed by some of the bass fishing's most prominent figures, such as Skeet Reese, Randall Tharp, Adrian Avina, and Jonathan Van Dam, just to name a few. Grundens. We are fishing.
There wasn't a lot. The McCallamy River was still pretty dirty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's obvious mudline when it hits the San Joaquin. You know, I went up into White Slough. Day one of the Western Bass Shootout, I had my biggest 5 bass limit I ever had in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I would estimate it over 35-pound 5 bass limit on day one of practice. And so I went back into that area and I saw some big ones, and that water's crystal clear. You know, the grass is fairly clean. The water's crystal clear. And I could see some big grills running around in there. But as far as the difference between the Western Bass Shootout and the Wild West, really there was no difference. Like about the same. Water temp was a little warmer. You know, guys were catching them on a frog. I don't think they were catching fish on a frog in a Western Bass Shootout.
Yeah. So for
yeah.
the most part, the main difference was just the water warmed up a bit, and fish kind of got, you know, were you focusing on bedfish at all when you were out there in whites? I know that's a big area
I was trying to, and I would see them roaming around, but nothing was locked, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'd see some little bucks, and then every once in a while see a big girl come in and cruise around. I actually put my boat in about 3 feet of water and sat for about an hour where I saw 2 6-pounders, just hoping they'd come back in, and, you know, and I caught, I think, a 3-pounder doing that, you know, just kind of waiting them out. But no bed fishing, no bed fish for me.
That's a very risky way to go about fishing out there.
Yeah.
I mean, giving up that much time on the Delta, that takes something.
I knew they were there in the area, but they just didn't come back in for me. And I checked on them 2 days in a row. Because that's all you need. If you get 1 5 or 6 pound bite, that's a difference maker right now. You know, like I said, 15 pounds a day in the Delta is a good number.
Now, do you think that, you know, if we don't get the same kind of storms next year and the water not, do you think having, I don't want to say a year off, but I mean, basically a year off, you know, but these fish are not going to be as pressured because they're going to be, you know, they're going to be spawning differently. They're already a month late or a month and a half late from when they should be. I think the Western Bass Shootout, that should have been the wide open tournament, you know, where there should have been 30 to 35 pound bags every day. That should have been happening, and it wasn't even close. You know, but then you come into this event, and do you think by next year, if this kind of calms down and we get maybe a normal California weather and we get some, you know, just regular days and the flows are good, you think it'll turn back on? This could see it again? Or do you think that the river is kind of seeing its heydays with all the different changes they're making?
I think for now it's seen its heyday. I think the long-term effects from them spraying is finally taking its toll. The sea lions are taking its toll. The tournaments, with all the droughts we've had, it's been super highly pressured for the last few years. It's taking its toll. I think a winning bag right now is going to be around that 15-pound range for a while, unless the government or us anglers, step up and get some changes made out there. So
Yeah.
I don't see it getting any better. I know the big ones still live there, but not like they used to. Those sea lions, they're wiping them out. And like I said, the spraying, that's killing the fry. I didn't see near the fry I should have seen this last week there. There should have been fry all over in white blue. Those are our new nurseries.
Right.
And I hardly saw any fry at all. And that's just not good. And I've seen them out there with a big sprayer, in a couple different areas. And, that might not kill them right away, but, 5-10 years go by. It's taking a long-term effect on our fish for sure.
Well, yeah, we're not quite getting the replenishment of the newer bass coming in. The first year they spray, it takes away some of the grass, gets rid of some of the other things, but I don't know. I know that the hyacinth is an invasive plant, and we need to keep it down. And people don't want it around their docks, but maybe I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answers, and I don't think anybody else does either, other than just say, well, maybe spray around those people's docks and in their little private areas, and don't spray to the entire river. But who knows?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me, because it only grows, the hydrilla and even the hyacinth will only go out so far. All the deep channels will still be open.
Right.
So to me, it's just a waste of, tax dollars, and it's not helping our fishery, So the more we could do as anglers to stop them spraying, the better. And as far as the sea lions go,
Ooh.
I don't know really what we could do about that. Maybe a relocation deal. And,
yeah.
I don't. But they're gonna keep coming back up.
I don't know either, because even in the local news, the Sacramento News has been talking about how many there are in some of the marinas now. I was recently out fishing for striper on the Sac River, or on the American River, and it was just amazing how many. Maybe it was a Sacker. Anyway, it was, but it was amazing how many, sea lions I saw that day. There was 5 or 6 of them. We launched at a Boyd's pump, which means technically we're on the Feather River, huh? And
yeah.
so we were right there at the junction. But it was one. Yeah, but there was some big old sea lions up there. It was like, and I've never really seen them that far up. That's something newer.
Yeah, I think it's just our salmon population is just dwindling in the bay and the ocean, and they're having to
find their food,
man. Yeah, exactly. So they're just making full-time residents in our delta system, in our rivers. I know they go all the way up. They'll go all the way up to Redding, chasing salmon.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know that I've ever seen them up that far, but if I that's definitely not what I want to. I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
That's a long ways to go. So, so now you've got. Let's talk a little bit about the river coming up. Now you've got the Columbia River coming up. You've already said how good of a fishery this place can be. What are you going to be focusing on when you head up there? I mean, what is it going to be in your head? It's going to be July. It's going to be hot. It's going to be the river flowing. Do you think it's going to be slowed down as far as what it's doing, or is that a really good time of year to be up there?
I think the bite's going to be on. I think you could expect, average of 20 plus keepers a day caught from most of the guys.
Wow.
And it's a river where you could actually fish one spot and keep catching them. Like, you'll find one spot and there'll be 50 to 100 fish in a 50 by 50 square foot area. That's how the Columbia River is.
Mm-hmm.
and it's like nothing. You know, what place could you go? Maybe like Shasta, you could get on some spotted bass or something where they
Right.
cool up like that. But the Columbia River, them smallies just stack up, man. They stack up like a school of salmon, where you can sit there, and what I'll be doing is I'll be throwing a 3.3 Kitech, probably a rip bait, maybe an A-rig. Last year I found a spot where I was throwing out one piece of structure, one isolated piece of structure, and I caught a fish, like I said, every single cast. It was crazy. I'd catch it, I'd get my board, I'd take my picture, submit it to Tourney X, and then by that time I'd pick it up, throw back out there, catch another one. And it was like that for the first pretty much 2 days of the tournament. The third day I kind of wore them out a little bit, and I had to venture around to get some other bites going. And but I'm expecting pretty good numbers for sure.
Mm-hmm.
As far as weight goes, you know, there's some good rivers. There's a John Day River. There's also another good largemouth river. 10 Ma won it with 22 pounds, I think, last year fishing for largemouth.
Yeah.
So it does give you that option to switch up your game and go largemouth fishing, you know, where you could fish for weight. Definitely you're not going to catch numbers, but you're going to catch, you know, 4 or 5 pound largemouth doing that. So, but yeah, I would expect it to be one of the best tournaments for sure if you're looking to see a lot of action, you know.
Right. Good one to watch, and good one to pay attention to on Tourney X and some of the events. You have mentioned now a bunch of times that you're fishing this Kitech on this little thing. Explain to us how you're fishing that bait, because we just watched, you know, one of the MLF events, or I just watched one of the MLF events, and I watched a guy fish this thing. Now I got it. Guy won it. Anyways, is
that Gus's Center?
No, he was fishing. He was fishing the Classic. But yeah, and it's you know, and it's one of those things. It's like, how are you fishing that bait in specific? You know, what is the key to fishing that bait and getting the bites you're getting?
You know, the key is using a really light head, which to me is a 3/16 ounce head, ball head. And I'll throw either G Money or the Gamakatsu head. And it just depends if they're suspended, I'll reel it fairly quick, you know, just a steady reel. But the most action I get to get bites in tough situations, different lakes and stuff, is just a real slow retrieve where you're barely ticking bottom, you know, and I'm talking as soon as you feel bottom, you just want to kind of almost speed up your reel just a little bit, you know, because otherwise you'll get hung up. Yeah. But just where you just feel the bottom, speed it up a little bit, and then go back to reeling it really slow again, and then when you feel the bottom, speed it up a little bit. And that gets you the most bites, you know. And sometimes you could, you know, sometimes you could reel it and just let it sit on the bottom for a second or two and then start reeling it again real slow. But light head and a real slow, steady retrieve is key for me.
Okay. I mean, now we've got all your secrets. We know exactly how we're going to go out there and fish. I'm going to go head out this weekend and do all of that.
Yeah. Go get them. I'm going with you. Where are we going?
Well, I'm thinking about actually heading back up to Almanor, so, you know, jump on in.
There you go. Yeah, bites to be on. I know I talked to Mark Pilgrim right after we left. He's like, oh, you guys missed the window by one day. He's jacking 17-pound bags. I'm like, oh, man. But I guess I can't complain. I won the tournament.
No, you can't complain. You got the trophy.
I figured them out.
You know, we've got about 3 or 4 minutes here before we wrap this thing up. Let's talk a little bit about Matt Nadeau now. You know, I kind of know who Matt is, and I've got a lot of respect for what you've done and how you've come along. But you know, let's talk a little bit about who you are and what you've accomplished, and you know, how you go about kind of beating the odds of you know, not taking that, you know, not being able to take the family with you when you go. And the other side of that is you made a statement that, you know, you're maybe looking to move out there and get on some of these bigger go try to make a name for yourself on the big events too, on the already pre-established, the Bassmaster Trail or the MLF, or what's your steps after this?
I'm just a blue collar boy. Been at it. I bought my first boat in high school, a little 16-foot Starcraft. And, I used to chase sturgeon, striper, salmon, kind of chase the season. I've always bass fished in between. Bass fishing took a hold and completely, almost 100% of my time gets put into bass fishing now. And, like I said, I'm a blue collar boy. I work. I paint houses. I grind it out every day to fish. And like I said, number one support is having a wife by my side, and just making a name for myself out west here. And the Brian Smith, Justin Lucas, those guys are perfect examples. That it could be done. It could be done. So I'm going to keep grinding it out, keep painting houses, hopefully keep winning tournaments. And then, Lord willing, man, I'm not letting nothing stop me. I'm going to be, fishing that MLF or the Elite Series and make a big name for myself. So, just going to hopefully have a good season. I finished 7th in points last year on the Apex Tour, qualified for the Western Bass Shootout. And right now I'm sitting number 1 Angler of the Year. So started off good this season and just can't wait to see what the future holds.
Yeah, I mean that sounds awesome, dude. I hope you get Angler of the Year. That'd be a huge accomplishment on top of everything else. And going out there, and I wish we didn't still have to go out there to make our name for ourselves as we do, but hopefully the Apex eventually turns into that, where you can really become somebody extra special out here on the West Coast. And I'd like to see some of those guys get drawn back over here and saying, hey, I don't know, maybe I'll go fish the West. There's some good fish, good fishing going on out there. But yeah. So, well, at this point, I think we'll wrap this show up, man. Matt, thanks for calling in today. And
yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be on the show, and I'm a big supporter of Bass Angler Magazine and Mark Lassane. He's a heck of a fisherman, and I appreciate everything you do, Ed. And, can't wait to be back on the show with my next win.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make that call too.
Heck yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Yeah, thanks for coming on, Matt. And we will talk to you guys next time. Another great angler coming up after this one in a couple weeks. So kick back, enjoy, and hope you enjoyed this show. All right, y'all have a good night.
See you guys.